Welcome, everyone. You are here with me, Michelle Walters, and my podcast co-host, Cinthia Varkevisser, for another week's episode of Mind Power Meets Mystic. We are really excited today to have our friend Leandra on the show. Leandra is a certified life coach specializing in helping women recover from heartbreak after a divorce. Her mission is to shorten the time it takes to heal and recover your sense of self after the trauma of a divorce. Her goal is to help women reignite their love with courage and attract the right mate. She helps women navigate the world of dating with an authentic approach of learning to have fun and confidence at the same time. Having been divorced herself, she knows the power of shifting your mindset from resentment to feeling love again. Leandra happily lives in the colony in Texas with her husband Dale and their family of 2 dogs and 2 cats. Leandra, we have stuff in common. Like, you're a dating coach, and I'm a person who is presently still in dating phase. Maybe not
Right.
forever, but at the moment. So I am particularly excited to have a dating coach on our show. We haven't had too many dating coaches.
Yeah.
And I want to be a wing woman. I want to be a really good,
Yeah.
right? I think everybody needs a wing person, and there are certain qualities that people need to have. So if we can add that in our convo, bravo, I'd love that. But Leandra, let's get started with how did you get into this field?
Yeah.
And I have to ask because I'm super nosy, how long did you date before you found this special person of
Yeah. No, well, it's part of my story. And I think I was answering someone was like, how long did you find your husband until after you dated? So I was divorced in 2000, I think it was 2010. And the year of my divorce, I was still separated. I had to go to 4 weddings. And um, one of them was my dad, who was remarrying after he had lost my mom. And I went around the whole wedding venue, asking anyone that I knew that was divorced, like family members. I'm like, how long did it take you to find your person? And they would like, and the average was 3 years. And I was like, 3 years? I was like, that's so long. Well, in the end, it actually took me 8 years between the two marriages. So that's part of where I talk about shortening the time because there's a lot of time wasted with the recovery, the being upset, being unintentional, right? We're just like, oh, I'll figure this out again. So part of why I do what I do is, whether it's divorce or widowhood or it's just been a terrible breakup and we just can't recover, I know how easily the time can just go, right? Where it can just pass by. And you say, oh, I'll just take a break from dating. And then before you know it, it can be like 6 months later, 6 years later, 12 years later. Now, thankfully, that didn't happen. I was actively dating in those 8 years. And I would probably say, and this is what I tell most clients if they're coming off a divorce, I usually say, like, don't come talk to me until a year. So I was like, you can come to my events, but I'm not going to start coaching you until a year to get you out there, just because there's a lot of, just a lot of stuff to uncover on the trauma part. And I definitely help with that if they're like ready, they're going through the heartbreak. During my divorce, I was heartbroken because I really was madly in love with my first husband. And so I was unprepared um, for having to go through what I went through. And especially at 30, I was divorced like right at 31. And so all my friends had just gotten married. They were starting to have babies. And so I was like, what is going on? So, so yeah, I was really upset. And so probably it took me, the first year I probably shouldn't have dated. I was dating for the wrong reasons, which is I want to solve my heartbreak. So I just thought, well, if I get into another serious relationship, get married as fast as I can, maybe I can, bypass the 3 years and get it at 1 year or 2 years. I was dreaming. I see you laughing, Michelle. It's so true. I was dreaming.
But kudos for the
I know.
optimism.
I was like, I still get in trouble with my timelines, but yeah, it's so true. And so yeah, it took me oh, just 1 second. I have to yell for a second. Sorry, I still live in an active household. Um, so anyway, yeah, so what happened was the first year or two, the first year was just terrible dating. I was dating for the wrong reasons, right? And then I did the like, oh, I'll just take a break from dating. And I thought at that time, like someone would just arrive in my life, right? And no one arrived. And then I looked at the clock and I was like, oh my gosh, it's been 11 months since anyone asked me out for a date or that I've been on a date. And I was 32 years old. And I thought, like, I didn't know how that happened. Well, it happened when you have your head down and not doing anything about it, right? You still have to be active and talking to people and meeting people. And so eventually, I became intentional and started starting to do online dating and things like that. And I did plenty of fish. I think it still exists today.
Around, yep.
Um, yeah, and it's a free online dating pr- uh,
Dating
website.
app.
Yeah,
Yeah.
dating app. And I think I did Christian Mingle, but I did the free version. So I wasn't getting a lot of traction on that. But
By the way, I used to work on Christian Mingle. In my
really?
marketing career, I worked on many, many things. And one of the funniest ones was I
Oh
worked on
my gosh.
Christian Mingle and JDate
Oh
because
my,
the
oh,
same
did it?
company, I don't know if they still do, but the same
Yeah.
company owned like all these religious ones.
Yeah, I remember Day Date. Oh my gosh, I was
Yeah.
not on that. But yeah, Christian Mingle, and I didn't do the paid version. I remember I was
Oh, then
like,
you got nowhere.
yeah, I got nowhere. And I just remember I was like, well, I'll just go to Plenty of Fish. But that's where I started getting traction. And then in the middle of all of it, I went, at the time, it wasn't called life coaching, but it was transformational work with an organization called Gap Community, which still exists today. And they still that was probably the first time I understood like how your thoughts create your results. And so in the middle of all this is when I found or went through a 4-day training where I finally uncovered why I was struggling in my dating world and not just the dating world, but my other relationships. Like everything was just very surface level and nowhere getting near to, as we're about to talk about, the heart, right? We were nowhere near the heart level. I just kept everything up here and I came out of there thinking like I really want to have deep relationships. I want to have and I actually didn't start with the dating piece. I started with my brother who my older brother at the time that I didn't have an estranged relationship with him. I just didn't have much of a relationship with him and I was like, I wonder like if I can really do this. And so he was my guinea pig. He didn't know what was happening. He's like, why are you calling all the time? So, but yeah, so and now we're many years later, like best buds. But yeah, and then my dating just completely changed because I wasn't going into a victim mindset. It was more like, how can I serve the people that are around me? And so I ended up through Plenty of Fish. I made the commitment I made a challenge where I was gonna date I was gonna do date 25 men in 6 months, like 25 different men. That was my goal. And it was a crazy goal, but I was like, I just got to keep at it. And so I ended up I met a lot of great men. I got up to 14, but number seven was the one that I ended up dating in a serious relationship for a couple of years where we actually did get engaged. We didn't make it to marriage simply because we didn't have the same life visions. And so we broke up amicably. And so then I found myself in the dating world again. And I was like, you know,
How do I get out of
I
here?
know,
Yeah.
I'm like, how am I here again? And so that's why it was like, even though it was 8 years, there were some serious things going on. And so then but because I knew how to do the process again, like I was just like, all right, we're gonna go and do the whole thing over again. But this time the tweak would be, even though I was going dating on values and like non-negotiables, and the man that I was with, my ex-fiance, had all that. We didn't want the same things in life, right? You can still have the same values, but your how you want to spend your time in your future still has to align. And so um learning that I was like, okay, so then I just got back out into the dating world literally 30 days later, and then I just spent the rest of that summer having the best time of my life. And then I went speed dating on the last day, and that's when I met my husband, who's my husband now. Now it wasn't sparks, like there wasn't sparks, but I was going through the process of like getting to know people. And then it didn't take that long because he was just so kind and so sweet and just I couldn't get enough of him. So
And
anyway,
adores you,
yeah.
clearly.
So yeah, so that's how so we have been now married 7 years. Our courtship was a little over a year because at that point you just know what you have some idea. So I knew I wasn't going to go into like let's live together or 5 years or anything. I knew I wanted to get married. I believed in the power of marriage. I still believe that today, and that's usually where I'm getting my clients to really think about that. Like we're not just dating for the sake of dating or companionship. We're dating, yes, for companionship, but
With an
for
intention
with the
to
intention
to
to
tie the
be,
knot. Yeah.
yeah. So I do make it clear because, and most of the women that do come to me, that's what they're looking for, right? But they've just been jaded or afraid or, whatever. But for the most part, they'll like shorten the time. If I had had a dating coach or if I just had someone sat with me and said, stop screwing around, it wouldn't have taken me that long. And then even the fiance guy, I probably would have been able to cut that off like at a year versus 2 years, right? There would have been a lot more. So that's where I help women where they're like, why, he's a really nice guy, or he's this, but then there's this thing that doesn't align. At least I can cut through and say, what does that look like in 5 years? You can be
Oh, Leandra,
married.
I can
Yeah,
totally see where your perspective would be really helpful. And you're coming at it from a perspective of like, this is what you focus on and what you do. I think like most people try and get this input from their girlfriends, right? Or most
yeah,
women do. And sometimes your girlfriends really do have good advice. And sometimes they're not experts.
yeah.
They don't know as much, or they might be invested in the situation, right? Like they know him or they want to defend him or they hate him or whatever.
Yeah.
And they're not able to participate or be as helpful because they're 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 rolled into the equation. You're kind of this, just like me and Cinthia when we meet with our clients, have like a layer of separation or a little bit
Yeah.
of
Hmm.
distance to be
Yeah.
able to kind of see what's going on. So, Cinthia, tell us a little bit about how Leandra's work fits with the second chakra.
Sure. The second chakra has to do with receptivity, connectivity. It's all the 80s that I like to talk about, right? Femininity. Um, and so what these people are looking for with Leander are all those things, all the things that are in the second chakra, right? Reciprocity. They're looking for things. The thing that I find really interesting because Michelle and I also have clients that are looking to date and things like that, is they forget that, um, like you said, there's work to be involved. When they look at the work, it's a different kind of inner work. Even though it's heart-centered, it is about alignment and things like that. So to go back to the second chakra ties into emotions. There's some ego in it. Um, and so knowing all that, can you see where your clients are? And do you have a thread? Because I can tell you the thread of my clients are people who want um, relationships, but they also want a certain amount of autonomy, and they're not necessarily tied to living together, but
Hmm.
but that doesn't mean they don't want to get married. They just want to have some form of independence. And so they're trying to wrap their minds around what is family, right? What redefine family and redefine a relationship so that they can have this super healthy relationship in a way that wasn't traditional even in the past 10 years,
Yeah, yeah. No,
right?
and I do believe the whole what you were saying, you can still live, not live together, but be married and still be, you don't have to be in the same household because a lot of women that I work with are already autonomous, right? They've already been they're almost close to retirement. Some of them are already retired. They have their grandkids, some of them have businesses and some of them are just like, I'm done working. I'm living my life. We're having a great time. But the thing that holds a lot of them back is obviously fear, right? And the fear that, especially if they're coming off a divorce, is or in a lot of women that I work with that have been divorced, this isn't a year out. We're talking 20 years later where they're like, "Oh, I do want to be with someone," right? I do. They've either coming out of that fear-based situation they've been in for 20 years, whatever they believe their ex-husband said, whatever they believe their friends said, whatever, or they put all their stock in taking care of their kids and grandkids, and then they get to a certain place, and then they're like, oh wait, this is do I do what I want. But the biggest thing I see is fear that they'll bring back the same type of person that they dealt with 20 years ago, right? And so trying to work through, you're a different person now, working through the belief system that they have put in their heart, which is you're too old, you're too late, no one wants you, you're a has-been, which women generally have, some form of you're not enough in the back of their brain. But also, if it's been said to them by an ex-husband or an ex-boyfriend, that is probably one of the hardest things to overcome. And so really learning to, say, bring down that belief system, because as much as I would like say, hey, believe this now, I can't. We have to step it up, right? We have to say, okay, let's like one of my favorite books by soundtracks, by John Acuff. He talks about lowering down the volume on something you've been saying to yourself for 20 years. And so that's one of the pieces that that I see. And then the other piece is women that have been single forever. I mean, we're talking about, and I say forever, but like, to what they've never been married. And so their belief system is it is never going to work for me. Right. So that's a different one, because they do have evidence of like, here I am still single, and I'm, 50 or 60 or whatever the age is. And so it comes down to the heart. What are you believing? Right. And so that's where I work with them on their mindset, because if we still have the mindset of, I'm afraid I'll attract the same guy, or I'm afraid no one will want me. And yeah, we know through dating, we will get rejected. And I usually say the word, it's not rejected. It's just that you're not each other's flavor, but society still says you've been rejected, right? Or they take that's rejection. And really, you're just not compatible, and it's okay. And I just was talking to someone yesterday that she's learning, she's working through. She's a Christian, and she's like, it's okay that this one didn't work. God's got the next one around the corner for me, right? Mel Robbins even says that in her Let Them book. The next person could be around the corner. You just got to keep going.
Yeah, but it can be hard to keep going.
Mm-hmm.
And I think, per your point that a lot of women, oh, I'm going to take a month off. And
Mm-hmm.
then a month turns into 6 or 7 or 8. And suddenly they realize like the better part of the year is gone.
Yeah.
Right. So,
Yeah.
what I picked up as you were talking about this that I think is really kind of exciting from some of the topics I love to talk about. I like to help people with decision making because I think people really struggle with decision making and don't always know how to be good about decision making. And when it comes to dating, because like I'm somebody who's had to do this a few times and I'm still in the process right now. I wrote down challenge 25 men in 6 months. Wowza. Not sure I could do that, but it's here on the list of things to consider. But tell us a little bit more about how you can help your clients to accelerate their decision making, because
Mm-hmm.
that's a big part of it, right? You go out with a guy, you like him, you go out another time. Like, are you going to go out with him 3 times, 20 times? Like, how do you help people with that part? Because honestly, I need help with that.
Yeah. Yeah. No.
And I'm good at decision making, but it's
Yeah.
different in the dating realm.
Yeah, it is. And I teach my clients to be talking to multiple people at one time. So that's the first thing. And even if they're online dating, as if you can remember from Christian Mingle, we're trying to get off the chatting part, right, and into an actual date. So even there, I will help them shorten the timeline. Like, we're only going to talk to someone for 3 text exchanges, and we're just going to get really clear. I'm not up for texting back and forth because you don't, I mean, some people say, I really got to know them, but I'm like, really? No, we need to get into the in person. So that's always a challenge for them. I was like, and if they're like three, that's barely, and I'm talking about three back and forth, right? And so
Yeah,
I'm
yeah,
like,
no, I understand. Yeah.
yeah, and I'm
You're not
like,
talking
okay.
about hi, hi.
Yeah, and I say, okay, we'll go 3 to 9, but no more than 9, right? Three's the goal, but 9. And if they're not open to, engaging in real life, then you say we go to next, right? There's plenty of people on the sites,
Plenty
and
of
so
fish.
yeah, plenty of fish, right? Just keep moving. And so, yeah, so that's one way. And then once they get out there, when they're dating multiple people, I go through a process where we look at your values, we look at your non-negotiables, not necessarily red flags. Non-negotiables, let's say if you have someone that is has a small child, like I have people that will cut off um that will say, I don't want to date anyone with a kid younger than 14, right? They need to be in high school. So that's not a red flag. That's a non negotiable. We've already raised our kids. So there'll be certain things like that because you can meet a great guy and they have everything. And then we get stuck in the like, but he has this kid and la 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 la. But if you know that's not your jam, like we don't waste time, right? So that's probably another thing that helps reduce the clutter, right? Because we'll be dating really nice men, but there'll be something that will come up. Like, and necessarily a lot of things don't happen on the first date. You don't know what type of person they are. You don't know if they honor their word. You don't know their kid. You don't know a lot. I mean, you got their profiles, but even if you're doing eHarmony that does extensive work, we still don't know.
Okay, okay. But like insider's tip from, I don't know, 10 or 14 years ago,
Yeah.
none of these dating companies really knew that much.
Yeah.
The algorithms were not the genius part. They tell everybody it's the algorithms, but you know what it is, Leandra?
Hmm.
It's the
Numbers,
inventory.
the
Yeah.
numbers, right?
It's the numbers.
Yeah.
It's the amount of people. And I think that's really important for people to realize is like
Right.
the magic happens in other places, but there are deeper wells to fish in, right?
Right. Yeah. So, and I tell people just so that they don't get into, so they can avoid burnout. I tell my women, I'm like, you can bounce around to many apps, but I ask them to commit to one. And not everyone wants to go to the app. Sometimes I'll say, okay, we're going to go to meetup events that are related to what you like to do. I have a client that likes to do pickleball. I'm like, okay, great. Let's start there. And the challenge will be, who did you talk to today, this week at your pickleball thing, right? Because you can go and then not talk to anyone. I was like, no, no, no. We got to go say hi and introduce yourself or whatever. I'll give them the challenge. But the big thing with those values and non-negotiables as they're moving through, I don't encourage dating one person at a time. It's multiple. Because even if you get to date number 3 with a guy, we don't know if they're going to, at the next day, decide, okay, you're not my flavor anymore, right? And then you can decide at date number 5, okay, this isn't working. And then you need to have not go back to the well, but already have someone else that you're talking to. And it sounds like I always call it the bullpen. You want to have like a roster of men that you're talking to because you'll rotate them in, right? And so I have a lot of moms that are like, I know that term because they raised their kids playing baseball. And I was like,
Baseball, right?
technically, men are raised with having a bullpen of women until they find the one. But we as women were not taught that at all. So I'm teaching new things for women that were born before 1986 that, hey, we got a new way of looking at this. And then by design, because we're using our hearts, by design, people will like they will fade away. Now, I won't say ghost, but you'll know that they're not the person because they're not showing the same you said the word so great, reciprocity, right? You'll know if you're chasing them. And then where I help with is start asking questions. I'll be like, well, how did he make you feel? Did he keep to your word? And that's a big thing. I could like write a whole story on that about learning to keep your word. And that's just human beings, right? Learning to keep your word. But that is, especially if you're coming off divorce or widowhood, not widowhood, but like divorce where people didn't keep their word. That is a big thing to start looking for. And so anyway, those are ways that I call it, it'll shake out. And then you just keep dating. Eventually, if you will, usually it comes down to two or three guys that you date for 3 or 4 months, right? Not also at the same time. Now, this is the part where some people are like, what do I do with the sleeping around, right? Like, do I start having sex with them all at the time? I usually encourage, no, we're not doing anyone with anyone until you're in a committed relationship. Now, I'm Christian. I encourage uh we're not doing that until marriage, but I also understand the human design where we want to get with our people that we're in love with, but we want to wait until we're in a committed relationship. So does that mean holding out for 90 days or, 4 months? It is worth the wait. And I could do a whole nother topic on that, but yeah, eventually it does look like that. And so if we date one at a time, that's where the part where we get sad and upset. And, this guy didn't work out. And then the 12 months pass by. We're like, I'll wait a month. That's usually when it happens. But if we're multiply talking to many men, and I say many, okay, 3 to 4. Okay. Really, 5 would be ideal, but I'll give you 3 to 4. And 5, you could be talking to someone on the apps, getting ready to go on a date as someone steps out. They didn't make it to the ninth inning. So, yeah.
Yeah, or they're
Cynthia's
just in
got
a
a
different sport.
question.
Well, actually, the one thing I have to say is COVID helped people not have sex for a really long time. So it changed the way people were dating, which is
Mhm.
fantastic. And my daughters talked about, they said that they loved COVID dating because they didn't have to worry about drinking, right? And they didn't have to worry about, mixed messages that they didn't even hold hands. So it was a wonderful thing. I want to go back to women pre 1986 because the women that I work with tend to be a little bit too goal oriented. I'm not sure if goal oriented is the word, but they know who they want, they know what they want. And then sometimes what happens is that they get a little bit invested too quickly or too strongly, I think is a good word because they know what they want and and they um so what happens is sometimes they are a little bit too intense and they forget that dating is about having a good time and knowing how to have a repartee and actually
Mhm.
have conversation. And from conversation, you get so much more than you can from interviewing somebody. So have you had clients like that? And how do you help them walk that line between being really intense and being really, really bashful?
Yeah. So I think that's the result of the hyper independence that I don't know if you've ever heard that term, but
Mhm.
where it's like we haven't needed anyone in so long. Part of the feminist movement, right? Where even our parents, I would say my mom, love my mom, she was an advocate for marriage, but she still was preaching, make sure you have your job, make sure you have all your stuff together, that you almost don't need a man, right? And so a lot of our culture has been raised that way. And then when men do come into the world, we're like, don't encroach on me, or, and especially if we've come from a failed marriage, we're like, oh my gosh, stay over there. And so I have seen that, and they tend to and I'll just be honest, as a dating coach, when I've run into them and they've come to my event, they normally don't think that they need a dating coach. So they'll come and be like, they don't like what I have to say about treating men with love and respect. So normally they'll still go at it their own way. So most of the clients that I work with that are attracted with having a dating coach, because that is built-in accountability, them willing to answer the hard questions, right? Someone that is like, and I'm not dissing any hard, very independent women. We all come from that, but sometimes we're not compatible as client and coach because they have to be willing to go into that vulnerable space. But if their mindset is we go hard too fast and then they find out that, oh, I should have taken my time, but I was in the results oriented space. So if they work with me and we're, some of this, I start with my clients 3 months. Sometimes it takes 6 months, right? That's usually where I'm like, hey, some people I'm starting, hey, can we just go talk to a man? Some I got them that they're rearing to go and let's go have a good time. But for the most part, we're starting in baby steps. So sometimes a woman of that nature who I give kudos to, I can see how they would get into that trouble. I would love to attract them, but they come and they're like, I don't need a dating coach. And I get it. It's hard because they're so used to having their own thing. And that's probably one of my goals is like, how can I help them? Because I know how to help them, but they also have to believe that they are willing to be helped.
I understand. It makes perfect sense to me, Leandra. One quick question for you. Do you coach men?
I don't.
You
They
don't.
come
Okay.
to, and it's not a no, and I'll just be, they're very similar to my very independent women that Cinthia just mentioned. They do come to my events, my online events. I have a in-person event that's only exclusive to women. And then I have an online event that men do come to. And they actually ask me a lot of questions, but anytime I've asked like, hey, you ready to work with me? They just look at me like I'm crazy. And so they also don't think they need help, but they do show up. So it's not a no. I just never have.
Gotcha. Gotcha. It's just not a, I hear you. We've had such a delightful conversation, Leandra. Thank you so much for being on Mind Power Mates Mystic today. What would you like to share with our listeners?
Yeah, that I definitely want them to believe that they are created for love and connection. Don't give up. Keep going. It does not have to be 25 dates in 6 months. That was just keep going. And if you find yourself, after a bad date or no one's, responding to you, come listen to, when I look at me on my social media, I'm always saying encouraging stuff. I'm always hosting an event once a month where you can come online or in person, where you get encouragement to meet women that have been where you have been and they're succeeding now.
Beautiful. Thank you so much, Leandra. And that is a wrap on another episode of Mind Power Meets Mystic. Please, if you have enjoyed this episode, we would love it if you would rate us, if you would review us, and if you would hit the little subscribe button and join us. We are here every week for you, and we would love to have you as part of our community. Thanks and bye.
Thank you.
Bye.